definitely have that tag and that title, but I was actually speaking to someone at the Collins Cup about it, and I don't really think it's fully justified, because I like with my pros, for example, I don't do any kind of low carbohydrate diet. I do take a right fuel, right time approach, which I'm sure we'll talk about, but the requirement, like Jan van Berkel, he does a low carb diet, but like Chelsea, Javier, Pablo, they do not, and it's all around choices and what works for the athlete at the time. And most elites, for reasons that we'll talk about, they don't need it as much as amateurs do. But yeah, I'm sure we will dive into that a little bit more as we move forward. But yeah, I mean, when it comes to exercise physiology and particularly endurance exercise, we typically we can have three fuels. We can use protein as a fuel, but we don't really do that. We use it very sparing. We do that very sparingly. But the two main fuels that everyone knows about is we use carbohydrates via glycolysis and then oxidative phosphorylation, which most people will know as the Krebs cycle. And then we also use fats through beta oxidation. And that also goes into the Krebs cycle, and that's how we produce ATP, how we produce energy, and very, very simply, fats the requirement of burning fats uses a little bit more oxygen than the requirement of burning carbohydrates. And so we're all led to believe, therefore, that fats are the least superior fuel, because they're not as efficient for us to use. But of course, when it comes to very, very long distance exercise, and that to me is the absolute key distinction. So when I talk about this, I'm always talking through the lens of long distance triathlon, really. I mean, 70.3 to some extent, but I'm more thinking Ironman, so 8 hours of exercise, where a determinant of success is the preservation of endogenous or internal carbohydrate stores. And that's like the key distinction for me. And we know that, in terms of what we can store in terms of our body for carbohydrates, it's about 1,500 to 2,000 calories in the liver and in the muscle. But then when it comes to fats, even the very leanest of individuals, someone as lean as yourself, Brad, can store 40,000 calories of fat. So therefore, when we talk about hitting the wall and we talk about running out of energy, it's what we call metabolically inflexible or unflexible. And we're looking for metabolic flexibility, where how can you be running out of energy and bonking when you still have that much fat that can be used as an energy source available to you? And if you can ramp up your fat oxidation to a very substantial amount, you can still go very, very fast. You can, I think the calculations are you can run about a 2:40 marathon on fat alone, so you don't need to, so there's the reason to run out of energy isn't really there. It's more of a fact that you can't access the fuel. And I always liken it to, it's like a fuel tanker going down the highway, and that fuel tanker has petrol in its engine, and it's going down, and it's got the fuel in the back. But every time the engine runs out of fuel, it has to stop, fill it with fuel at the petrol station, and keep on going. But the difference is that if you become fat adapted, all you're doing is you're getting the pipe and you're sticking it right into the fuel tank, and you're opening yourself up to more energy, more ability to burn fuels. It's Dr. Dan Plews here, back on the Physical Performance Show. This time talking about the low carbohydrate diet and the right fuel, right time approach.